Hello and welcome to the Sound Up Seattle podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Seattle and Washington sports. I'm your host, Tyler Cartwright, joined as always by my co-host,
John Carey.
And we are here today breaking down quite a bit going on. This is kind of the peak of our podcasting time. We've got the Mariners, we've got NFL, we've got college football, and it'll keep being hot as college basketball rolls around. But for right now, there's a ton going on. John, anything you want to say before we dive into it?
Just how glad I am that football's back, man. We got a lot of sports to talk about, but a lot of football, and I am excited.
Love it. All right, well, before we get started, as always, a little Coyote picnic. All right, John. First things first, I need to fix my headphones so that I can not hear myself. Then we're going to talk about the Mariners. Let's do it.
Yeah, Mariners have had an interesting week since we last talked. There have been definite ups and there have been definite downs. Coming off that disastrous first two games against the Athletics, they managed to win the next two, both in pretty dominant fashion, including a 16-3 win. God, I hate the Mariners sometimes, man. I hate that they'll beat a team 16-3, beat them 5-3, and then spread those other 11 runs across games. But yeah, then they had a two-game series win against the Cardinals, 2-1. A 1-1 game split against the Padres, and lost Game 1, 5-4, in a 4-game series against the Texas Rangers. Yeah, I guess, overall, a decent week. What is that? 5-3 on the week?
Yes, 5-3 since we last talked.
And nice to see that. The creeping games above 500. I think they were at 500 last we talked. Now they're 2 games above. Good. We like that. It's been mercifully paired with a rough outing for the Astros. They were swept by the Reds and then had a couple other tough series. So. That margin in the AL West has shrunk slightly, but it's still 4.5 games. We'll talk a little bit more about game specific, but overall, are you feeling any more encouraged since last we talked?
No, not at all. I think that's the main thing is the Astros have faltered a little bit, and we have had the opportunity to catch them, especially with those Angels and A's series, and we had those 4 straight games of 1-run losses. If we come out of that 3-1 or 2-2 even, that puts us 2.5 games back or 1.5 games back. I don't remember which is which. But instead we're still 3.5, 4.5 games back of the Astros in the wild card, and it's just not looking like something that we can come back from. I think we're in the middle of September now, and the Mariners have what is their record? 74-73. They've got 17 games left. Did I count that right in my head really quickly?
Yeah,
and that's just 4.5 games is a lot to make up. 3.5 is a lot to make up in 17 games, especially when the Astros, I believe, are playing series against the A's and the Angels, and obviously the Astros should eat them up like we should have. And so when it comes down to it, I am a lot less confident than I was, a week ago. Even though we did say it was kind of time for the Mariners season to be over, I'm even less confident the Mariners can make this turnaround.
Yeah. Slowly creeping up on the Astros isn't going to cut it, really. They're too good. They've got too weak of a schedule remaining in their season. And this is not a year. We've had those years in baseball where it's a great year to be a, 3 games above 500 wildcard team. And that's not happening this year. In both the AL and the NL, the wildcards are being eaten up by these teams that are 12 games, 13 games above 500. I guess you could say that's a good year for top of the league parity, but a bad year to be the Mariners because they're going to have to catch up with the Astros if they are going to want to make the playoff. The Astros are currently half a game behind the Minnesota Twins, who are the 3rd wild card in the American League. So it's going to be the division lead in the AL West that gets to represent. 4.5 is a lot of games.
Yeah, and I will say I miscounted. I think it's 15 games left quick math in my head always goes wrong. But we do play a series against the Astros, and even if it's a 3-game series, and I just don't have the confidence in this team to pull out all 3 of those wins kind of situation.
Yeah.
Luis Castillo, we haven't talked since this, but Luis Castillo just went down with a little bit of an injury, might be on the 10-day IL or whatever it may be. And our bullpen seems tired, and it's just like we're getting towards the grind part of the season here, and we've been in it for a little while, and the bullpen has faltered quite a lot. You see all those 1-run losses. You see, yesterday's game against the Rangers. We go into the 7th inning with a 4-1 lead, and they blow that, lose 5-4. That Padres game, George Kirby had a rough start. But it's like all of our offense, like you said earlier, all of our offense in little spurts. And then when we can't continue to stack runs on, our bullpen has not been able to hold it down. So it's been a tough little stretch here. I will say I've really been enjoying watching Cal Raleigh hit. He got to his 30 home runs. He had a really nice game against the Rangers yesterday defensively. And he's kind of been the bright spot as the Mariners season is coming to a close right now. So I just wanted to shout him out before we even do floating and floundering.
Yeah, and we'll get there soon. I'm not sure how much more there is to say, but even if we swept the Astros in that last series, that would still mean we would have to make up a game and a half against them over the course of the rest of the season, which not only do I think it's very unlikely that we get a 3-game sweep against the Astros, but I don't feel confident that we could make up 1.5 games on them outside of that. So put those 2 things together, and yes, it is looking very, very dire. Moving on to floating and floundering, we don't have a ton to say about a ton of these guys, but a couple guys we wanted to either shout out or call out. And I'm going to lead it off with probably the strangest floater that we have discussed this year, and that is Luis Urias, who returned to the team. He's been dealing with some injury stuff. He hasn't been, getting into the lineup a whole ton. He only played 1 game in the month of August after missing all of June and July.
Well, he didn't even miss it. The Mariners sent him down. He played so horribly because he was supposed to be the third base platoon. And so that's what it was. He was playing in AAA, and I think they just called him up for that 1 game.
Yes.
But yeah.
That's a very good call. I was looking, I was confused. I was like, I don't remember him dealing with a serious injury, but he was playing very, very bad. He, hitting 152 by the end of May. So yeah, they sent him down. Yeah, got called up for 1 game against the Oakland A's. That was that 3rd game, the 16-3 dominant win, and he put up just a crazy stat line: 3 for 4 with 2 doubles, a home run, and a walk. So in 5 plate appearances, he got on base 4 times. He had 3 extra base hits, generated 4 RBI, 3 runs. So he is looking at the very impressive statistic of a 750 batting average and a 2.8 OPS. That's not 0-280. That is 2.800 OPS in the month of September. So very, very small sample size. But I guess my question for you is, when somebody has a game like that, how do they not find their way back in the lineup the next game?
It's one of those things where, because we were platooning him and because he had done so poorly earlier in the season, I think the Mariners couldn't trust those numbers. He's been on a hot streak down in Tacoma right now, and he's kind of that kind of guy. He's a quad A guy who just outperforms in the AAA level, and whenever he gets to the MLB, he's kind of been, whether it was the last couple of years with Boston and I believe Milwaukee, he was not really that great of a player. He'll have his moments, and I think he's kind of a momentum guy where it's like he was playing so well down in Tacoma that he can come up for a game, but they were also playing the A's. It's like the A's are not a good pitching team right now, and they're basically all a quad A team in and of themselves. So you see a good showing from him, and it's nice to see. I think he did deal with an injury earlier in the season as well, where it was like he's been a little bit off track, and so it's good to see him get just some playing time in the majors right now. Let him show off. I think we only got him for a year, so we'll see if anything comes out of that. But you don't play him because your third base platoon doesn't need it. You've kind of stuck with Josh Rojas to this point. You can't switch it up now with 15 games left.
That's very fair.
Yeah. Well, my first one, and you could tell we've been lacking in the floater department for the last couple of weeks, so we had to pull
desperate.
One from the depths.
I thought that was crazy. Just a 1 game absolute smoke show.
Yeah. For sure. I am going to go with a floater that is kind of a little bit under the radar one up until recently, Justin Turner. Justin Turner, I guess when we acquired him at the end of July, kind of right before the trade deadline, we were hyped. He had a pretty good start as a Mariner, and then cooled off a ton. I think we had him as a flounderer for a little stretch there.
He's been both a floater and a flounderer already on this podcast. He has been very up and down in his tenure. Exactly.
And it's nice. He's turned it around a little bit. Granted, it was the end after that Oakland series. He got to St. Louis. And over his last, 6 games, I believe he has 8 hits. Where am I looking? 6 hits. 8. He's gotten on base 8 times. And he's just looked really solid. He's got his batting average back up to 251 in the month of September. He's hitting 250 with a 400 on base and a 406 slugging for an 806 OPS. It's just kind of a nice, well-rounded stat line for him. You see, he's gotten that slugging up. He had a home run yesterday against the Rangers that was very impressive, kind of to dead center, and Justin Turner's not necessarily a guy you look at for power, but over this recent stretch he's kind of found his swing again, and I'm hoping he can ride it out and finish the season strong. We'll see how that goes, but he's just looked really good right now, and it's nice. I like the old guys kind of enjoying their last hurrah, even if it is Justin Turner's, half a season with the Mariners. It's just kind of fun to watch. And getting the Mitch Garver and Mitch Hanigers out of my eyesight has been a pleasant surprise. So
that on its own is worth a thank you. It's worth noting too, well-deserved shout out, but that's still that 250 in the month of September. Guy was batting 300 on the Blue Jays. That's what he was doing when we acquired him. So even that 250 is still 50 points below what I was expecting from Justin Turner. So it still has been a disappointing tenure in my opinion. But he's been playing better. And as you said, he's 34 years old or however old he is. It's pretty incredible. I
think he's like 38. I think he's old.
Yeah, you're right. I was thinking football old. He's baseball old. So it's pretty impressive what he's been able to do. That red beard's getting a little gray.
I will say in the month of August he did hit 225 with a 366 or 333 on base and a 366 slugging. So it's just he had a 699 OPS and now it's an 806 for the last few games. So just a good thing to see from him. Hopefully it's a surge towards what he was doing with the Blue Jays.
Absolutely. My second floater. A lot of floaters we have here for how negative
we had to be happy
about
something with the Mariners.
Isn't it interesting? It's very us that when the Mariners were 10 games above 500, we were calling out flounderers every week. But when they're sitting at 500, it's all floaters. I think, we kind of want to shout out the good appearances when the team's playing poorly, and we want to call out the bad appearances when the team's playing hot. My second guy is also a floater, and it is one of our personal favorites, Luke Raley. Who is putting together not just a really good September, but a really good couple of months. This is a guy that bat 129 in the month of July. His batting average plummeted from 260 all the way down to 230. And since then, it's just been steadily climbing due to a 264 August and so far a 278 month of September, including a 989 OPS. He has been really locked in, and it really started at the tail end of that Oakland series. He had a 3-for-4 outing in that 3-for-5 outing in that dominating 16-3 win against Oakland. Had another hit in the first game against St. Louis, 2-hit, 2-double game in that last third game against St. Louis, and a couple, 1-hit, couple RBI games against San Diego. He went 0-for-4 against the Texas Rangers, but I wanted to shout him out. He has been, kind of filling a big need on this offense, playing a lot for us, and, finding pretty good success. So I've been very pleased with the play of Luke Raley, and surprised.
Yeah, I think what's happened with Luke is Exactly. We called him out. I think it was a month and a half ago. Whenever we had a flounderer session where he had been hitting super poorly for quite a while, and we were like, this guy's the Dylan Moore of the outfielders right now. He's getting overexposed, and he's hitting whatever it was 150 over the course of 2 months. And since then, since they've acquired Randy, since Julio's come back, and since Victor Robles has established himself, he's been able to be a platoon bat like we wanted him to be at the start of the season. Correct. And so that's just like you're seeing the explosiveness of him as a lefty platoon bat, and he's put together actually a really good season for a guy who was not expected to be a huge part of this roster. I think he was part of the he was the Jose Caballero trade, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he's definitely been a part of this team in a greater way than I think anybody was expecting, and I think he's hit the second most home runs on the team, if I'm not mistaken. He's just been kind of a consistent guy, and somebody who I think the fan base has turned to and really, really appreciated his hustle and just kind of the way that this guy plays. So a fun player to have on the team, and I think you've seen with this outfield coming together in the way that it has since the trade deadline, he's really excelled in where he was supposed to, and when we acquired him at the start of the season.
Yep, 19 home runs, which matches his total in 2023, which was a career high. We'll see if he can break that this year. That would be very exciting. And I think you said it well. Yeah, worth reiterating. When he is in his role, he can be a very effective MLB player. I really noticed this, I've watched way too much football these last 2 weeks. And you watching a sport like football or, basketball or most other professional sports, the role doesn't necessarily define how a player looks. It's like Justin Jefferson, whether or not he has like a good quarterback, kind of looks like Justin Jefferson out there. It doesn't really matter. His stats might be a little different, but it's still Justin Jefferson out there. Baseball, in my opinion, more than any other sport, a player's success can be totally predicated on, the position that he's put in. And I think you really see it with these guys who, they can be really effective role players, but if you put just an ounce too much exposure on them, if you move them 2 spots too high in a batting lineup, they can completely fall apart. It's very interesting. I can't say I completely understand it, but I think somebody's going to write their master's thesis on the 2024 Luke Raley season. But yeah, good to see him find his role again and find success. Second on the team in home runs. His slugging on the year has been awesome. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I for a second there I thought you were going to completely zag against what you had said last time. We talked about Luke Raley when we were talking about him floundering, because last time you were like, man, these guys, when you overexpose them, they could just, they get overexposed and they just look like crap players, and there's not really a place for them in the MLB. And I was like, I thought you were going to zag against that and be like, these guys rock. Like, this is the best thing ever.
Absolutely not. I think he's a good example of put a player in the right position and he can succeed, but don't take that success as meaning he could do it anywhere. That's what I'm saying. Yes, he is not Justin Jefferson.
That's like what everybody sees. I feel like the analytics departments of all these Major League Baseball teams are like, oh, we got to get this guy. And they look at just his stats and they don't look at the splits or whatever it is. And, the Mariners acquired Luke Raley for that reason. But some teams would have acquired Luke Raley and been like, this guy's an everyday player. He had 19 home runs last year in whatever it was, 100 games. I don't know how many he played. But yeah, you definitely got to use him in his spots. I feel like a lot of this Mariners team, I think it's been similar for Josh Rojas as the season's gone along. He's been a little overexposed, and we've talked about that previously. Like I said before, Dylan Moore. Like, the Mariners have a lot of these guys who, if they just had, I don't want to say the Mariners should sign a Mookie Betts guy, but like a guy like Mookie Betts who plays every day and is consistent against whoever he pitches
sign
against,
a Mookie Betts guy
or whoever he plays against. I would love that, but you got to have expectations here, buddy. But yeah, just it's fun to watch Luke succeed is what I will say.
All right, let's get to the last one here.
Yeah, I have got a flounderer. I figured we needed to talk about it because George Kirby is having his worst season as a Mariners pitcher right now. He's got an ERA of 3.77 over the entire season. he's got a decent whip at 1.12, but he's got a good strikeouts. He's going to probably throw close to 200 innings like he did last year. But over his last 7 starts since August, the entire August and all of September so far, his ERA in the month of August was 6.84, and his ERA in the month of September currently is 5.73. He gave up 3 runs to the Tigers and then 6 runs to the Tigers, 2 runs to Pittsburgh in his one of his 2 quality starts over this 7-game stretch, and then 3 to the Giants, 5 to the Angels, and then he just gave up 5 to the Padres and had 2 to Oakland a little while back. It's been tough going. His ERA has climbed from 3.13 at the start of August to 3.77. It's been a rough stretch for George Kirby. I wanted to ask you if at this point, I know you're a huge Kirby guy. They're getting close to having to get these contracts to put together for Logan Gilbert and George Kirby. Who are you taking between these 2 guys?
Oh, I really don't think that's that tough of a question. And I am a huge Kirby guy. This year's been very disappointing for a couple of reasons. But I still really believe in him in a lot of different ways. But it's Logan Gilbert. And it's Logan Gilbert, I would say, for 3 main obvious reasons. One, he's just had a better year. And if all else is equal, I'm going to lean on recent success. 2, he's got a better frame and size as a pitcher. Not only to generate a little more velocity and a little more power now, but also to, sustain a career into the future. It helps to have that extra length and torque on your throws. And 3, there've just been some stuff, and it's never been super concerning to me, but there's been some stuff around George Kirby. How does he feel playing in the city of Seattle? There's been some stuff. Nothing major, but there's been nothing out of the Gilbert camp other than positivity and happiness to be here. So for those 3 reasons, I think clearly Gilbert is the guy if you have to pick one of the 2. I would be remiss if we didn't hold on to both of them. I would much rather move on from Luis than move on from either of those guys.
That's very fair. I just wanted to ask the question because I remember, I think it was probably right after his 7-inning start against Houston in that 18-inning game in the playoffs a couple of years back, where it was like George Kirby looked like the man. And that season, George Kirby was awesome. Yes. And people were like, this guy should be our number 1 pitcher going forward. And I think he's fallen. Coming into this year, even I think you and I were talking about it, and he's fallen from that, Mariners ace type pitcher where the Mariners were supposed to have 4 aces. He might be a tier below that, I think, is where he is. I think that's just kind of going to be him as a pitcher. He's more of a mixing pitches kind of guy. He's not going to overpower you, which I think he's been surprised to figure out as a pitcher. Like, he's just had to work on some things over the last couple of years, and this year is kind of his year of I had some flaws in my game. It's going to be his off season of what do I do to fix these things. I've added 6 new pitches since I came to the Mariners. What do I do? So we'll see how that changes going forward. I know the Mariners love Logan Gilbert, but I wanted to shout out George Kirby and talk through kind of what's been going on with him, because he's a guy that a lot of Mariners fans really like. And I think there should be some fear that, in the next couple of years, he's going to move on and the Mariners are going to move on from him.
Sure. And unfortunately, the scary thing would be that, if him and Gilbert were both awesome, it would be much harder for management to justify moving on from one because they're cheap and they want to. They are desperate to not have to pay our great players big money. But if he continues to struggle a little bit going into next year, it'll be much easier for management to say, like, hey, depreciating asset, let's move on from it. But I also, I wouldn't want to overreact. He's had a rough couple of months. His ERA has dropped from right around 3. And if your ERA is right around, 3.0, you are a really good pitcher in the MLB. The fact that 3.77 is the worst he's ever done for us speaks to how consistent and really solid he's been. But I also just think pitchers not only have up and down years, but especially pitchers that are at the top of the scouting report for a team. And coming into this season, George Kirby was, if not absolutely the best pitcher on the Mariners, certainly the guy that was on the top of people's lists for, like, how are we going to prepare for this guy? Next year, that won't be the case. Next year, it's going to be Logan Gilbert. And maybe Kirby will have a bounce back year, maybe just because he'll be feeling better and pitching better, but also because he might be getting a little less attention than he did coming into this last year. I think only the very best pitchers in the MLB are able to sustain success every single year a lot of guys live in that range where it's like, oh, he's having an awesome, like, borderline Cy Young conversation year. And then the next year he's like, oh, this is a much more average pedestrian pitching year. I remember Jake Arrieta on the Chicago Cubs would do that. He would vacillate every single year. The dude won the Cy Young in 2015, I think, and the next year he was much more mediocre. He was more of a George Kirby type. So those guys exist.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Another guy to keep an eye on is Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller sneakily has passed up Logan Gilbert for the team ERA lead. Bryce Miller's been looking really solid, and we're not going to talk through him a ton as well right now, but I think he's just a guy to keep your eye on. Brian Wu had 6 innings of a perfect game against the Padres the other day. It's been a good stretch for the young guys on the pitching staff, I think.
Definitely. Absolutely. All right, that is enough baseball. I'm sick and tired of talking about it. Get me to the good stuff. College football. There are 2 teams we like to talk about in the state of Washington, and both of them are undefeated.
And they play each other this weekend. Tomorrow.
We'll get to the Apple Cup, don't you worry. Let's start with UW's 30-9 win over Eastern Michigan. This was the first UW game that I watched all the way through. I came away with a lot of notes, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
This Washington team looks really solid. I think this game was the get Will Rogers right game. I don't know. I think we talked about this last week, how Jonah Coleman had an awesome game and the Huskies ran all over Weber State. And then this game, it was like, okay, Will Rogers, we are going to get you some reps. We are going to have you throw deeper balls and just kind of be more of the passer that we expected from you coming into this season. And it showed. He went 21 of 26 with 4 touchdowns, 261 yards total. Just a really solid game from Will Rogers, and I was excited to see it from him.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. Offensively, Jonah Coleman had another awesome day. He was 11
he was great.
He was averaging almost 10 yards a pop on the ground, and the fact that he only got 11 carries speaks exactly to what you're saying. They were like, Jonah, they had him on a leash over there. It's like, you can get 10 yards whenever we give it to you. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to show everybody why we handed the ball from Michael Penix to Will Rogers. Will, let's see what you got. And he was awesome. Not only was he super efficient, he was attacking downfield. When I see guys go 21 and 26, that's some Bo Nix bullshit, where they normally get 21 to 26 for 170 yards and a touchdown. That's not what Will was doing. He was attacking downfield. He was spreading the ball around, hitting different guys on different types of routes down the field. I was really, really, really impressed. Now, it was Eastern Michigan, but some of these throws were into tight windows with defenders on these guys. And yeah, so a couple of his touchdowns, he had one to Denzel Boston and one to Jeremiah Hunter that I thought, those are NFL throws. So I was really impressed. Moving on to the receivers, Jeremiah Hunter, the tight end, had an amazing game. 5 for 72 and a touchdown. He was basically a non-factor in the last game. To see him step up second in the team on receptions, he was amazing. He did really, really good. What was the name of our UW tight end last year that we liked so much?
Westover. Westover was the guy.
Thank you. Westover was such an underrated piece of that offense and would come up in really big situations on third down all the time. Jeremiah Hunter is giving me massive Westover vibes. They really remind me of the way that they both played in terms of being able to attack down the seams. Giles Jackson was nice, 6 for 66. Denzel Boston, only 3 receptions, but 2 of them were touchdowns. And Decker DeGraff, 2 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Definitely a big play weapon. Yeah, this is not last year's team offensively, but dare I say it might be somewhere near that tier. I've been really, really impressed. Now, we'll get a better test coming soon, but I was blown away.
I think what it is, and we've said this once, it's Eastern Michigan. It's not like it's the best teams, but you've seen them be able to spread their offense to, they can throw the ball, they can run the ball, they could do multiple different things with this offense. And we were worried about that with Ryan Grubb leaving. It was kind of okay, where is this offense going to go? And Jed Fish, I will say, at Arizona, he was really good at both running the ball and their passing. So it's nice to see that he's kind of followed that and used that a similar scheme here. I want to see more from Denzel Boston. It's nice that he had those 3 catches and 2 of them for touchdowns, but I feel like he has more big play potential. And, he was kind of a conservative 3 catches, only 32 yards. I feel like he's got more of that like Jalen McMillan type plays where he can get those 20 yarders. I think Giles Jackson is closer to a Polk than he is an Odunze, so it'll be interesting. We don't have that like number 1 threat yet on the receiving side of the ball. I like Hunter a lot as a tight end, but I feel like they're still kind of trying to figure out who's going to replace who in those 3 positions. You've got the McMillan, you've got the Polk, but where's that Odunze going to come from? And I think it could be Boston, and we might see Decker DeGraff move into the McMillan role. But you've seen the big play potential there with DeGraff with that 41-yard touchdown. So maybe he's the Odunze threat, and they'll get there. But I've really liked what I've seen from this Washington offense. I also like that they've gotten Damon Williams Jr. a few touches. Like he's going to be the quarterback, I think, next year once Will Rogers leaves, and getting him a couple touches even against these worse opponents is good for him and to build his confidence and to show, hey, we believe in you for next year. You're going to learn behind Will Rogers and get this experience. And it's been nice to see him.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. Especially with the game started, it was a little bit rough defensively. They were really allowing Eastern Michigan to move the ball effectively down the field. Michigan was able to generate 2 field goals over the course of the first quarter and a half. But I was really impressed with UW's, and it really reminded me a lot of UW's defense last year in the bend, don't break mentality.
Yep.
And that's something, people throw around, but you watch teams every once in a while where it really applies, where it's like, if the other team is on the 50-yard line, this team cannot get a 4th down to save their lives. Like a 1st down is all but guaranteed. But the second that they are in the red zone, the defense plays very differently. That's what they were able to do. They allowed really the 2 field goals before stepping up defensively for the rest of the game. They got Eastern Michigan had a late field goal to end the game, but it wasn't really anything. So I just wanted to, shout out the defense. I was concerned with the way that Eastern Michigan was able to move the ball, and I think that will be a concern going forward. But if they can continue to hold teams to field goals in the red zone and hope that this offense can be, a top 15, 20 offense in college football, I think that is how this team finds success.
Yeah, defensively it's interesting. They haven't allowed a touchdown yet through 2 games, which is awesome to see. And what I've kind of thought of this team as right now is they are trying to stop the big plays, is what it is. Because the big plays would lead to touchdowns and things like that. But if you can limit teams to, a 10-yard throw instead of a 40-yard throw, that'll give you the opportunity to defend such that they can't go over your head. You've got to keep them in front. And I think you can see it also in the fact that they haven't created any interceptions, or they haven't created any turnovers from the passing side of the ball. They've gotten, I think, they didn't get an interception in week 1, did they, as well?
I don't remember week 1.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Seahawks. They got an interception week 1. But yeah, I think just the lack of turnover potential in these first 2 games is scares me a little bit when it comes to our cornerbacks and safeties. Just we haven't capitalized against a lower tier of opponent in Weber State and Eastern Michigan. So I'm hoping that we can keep this going, but I would not be surprised if Washington State is able to get a couple explosive plays and get a few touchdowns.
A couple? Are you kidding me? We're going to have a lot to say on Washington State here in a second. But it's worth noting, much like our defense last year, I think our defense last year is what we should aspire to be, in that
yes,
this is a defense that has, over the last 2 years, bent. They have bent left, they have bent right, they have bent significantly. Game to game, they have bent. But they have been able to really limit teams' effectiveness in the red zone and then getting big stops when they need it. To your point, they've allowed both Weber State and Eastern Michigan to move the ball, but have not allowed a touchdown yet. That is good. Let's see if we can do that against teams like Michigan.
Yeah.
In that regard, this Washington State game is going to be a real test. But before we talk about the matchup, let's talk about the Cougars.
We have to talk Washington State's game, yeah.
Now, first things first, I have to apologize for the Cougar shade I threw in our
prediction
last week. I didn't want I didn't want the points. I got scared away like a coward. You were correct, and I'm here to eat crow. Washington State beats Texas Tech 37-16. Where do you want to start?
I mean, they were up 27-10 at halftime. They were just beating on them.
They were just beating on them.
I think their style of offense is very interesting. You've got Mateer throwing 9 for 19 with also 21 carries. It's kind of a weird, like, Lamar style of offense a little bit, but it's more like relying on him to run the ball. It's so weird.
Stop. Don't say that like you just said it. John Mateer carried the ball 21 times for 200 yards in this game. That is absolutely bonkers. That is such a crazy stat that for a full second, I thought John Mateer's brother had a breakout game at running back. I was like, I didn't know the quarterback had a brother that played on this team. That is unbelievable. And what's so fascinating is last week he had his incredible, 380-yard, 5-touchdown game to open their season. I completely failed to notice that in that last game he carried the ball twice for 55 yards and a touchdown. So he was already showing his really good legs in that game, albeit on 2 carries. He carried the ball 21 times in this football game. I'm assuming that that's a combination of Texas Tech being able to generate just enough pressure to force him out of the pocket while failing to generate enough pressure to bring him down. To contain him? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. They were failing to contain him. That's well said. But I am just curious what John Mateer can't do, because this is a game 9 of 19 for 115 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. That is a very mediocre passing performance. But we know what he can do in the pocket with the ball in his hand. He had 380 yards and 5 touchdowns last week. And the fact that he carried the ball for 200 yards on the ground, he might be the most dynamic, not the best, but the most dynamic quarterback in college football. That is insane. It's crazy. That's kind of what Washington State has done the last couple of years. Like, they had Cam Ward last year, who was he was in the Heisman conversation for a little bit there. He's going to be in the Heisman conversation again this year for Miami. So he's the only reason that Mateer won't be is because he plays at Washington State. It's the same thing with Cam Ward. It was like these guys were offensive producers, and Washington State is good at getting their offense to work in that way. I will say he had one run that was 68 yards. So over the other 20, he had whatever that is, 130, which is a little more pedestrian, but still 20 carries for a quarterback for 130 yards is very good. I think Washington State's just been able to find weaknesses in their opponents, and they've allowed a couple scores. Texas Tech scored less than Portland State did because their previous game was a 70-30, just like offensive explosion. But Washington State has shown that they can play with the best of them. And it's just been exciting to see. They've been an exciting team. Absolutely. And yeah, I think both sides of the ball, they really proved it this week, putting up 37 against a, not a world-beaten defense, but a Texas Tech defense that is respected. And the defense holding Texas Tech to 16 points, especially considering that, to your point, they were down big early. That's when you see defenses, give up some chunk plays and, kind of garbage time touchdowns type of thing, but they limited them to 16 total points. I was impressed, but yeah, I really think the story of this game was John Mateer. And with that in mind, let's talk about this matchup, because this is a Washington State team that has put up 107 points in 2 games. Now, obviously, the Portland State game, you can put an asterisk on that, but this is a team that is going to, in my mind, especially against this, questionable UW defense, they are going to hang with UW offensively, if not exceed them. Yeah, I 100% agree. Like I was just saying, I think that they have the big play potential here. I will say I don't think UW is going to allow Mateer to run for 200 yards. I just don't think that is something that this defense will do. They're good at, even if quarterbacks can scramble, they're good at giving them 4 yards, maybe. They're not going to have that big play.
it'll be interesting to see how UW's offense fares against Wazoo's defense. I haven't seen anything that would say that they're amazing. Like, I haven't heard of anything, but
certainly
the fact that they held Texas Tech to 16 points is a good sign for them.
They also allowed Portland State to score 30, so that was,
I know,
it was a good game, but let's not over-exaggerate. Yeah,
it's wild, yeah. So I think it's going to be a close game in like the 30s. Like, I think both of these teams are going to be able to score on each other.
Yes.
I think, we could talk betting, but I think that plus 5.5 line for Wazoo is crazy. In my opinion, this is going to be a rivalry game. It is weird. It's at Lumen. It's not at home. There's no home field advantage technically for either team.
Technically, but it's still, you throw a rock from Husky Stadium and hit Lumen with it.
Yeah, but it is just kind of like, it's going to be more of a neutral site than it would have been at one of the two.
Of course.
And granted, UW has beat Wazoo for, I think, each of the last, or 8 of the last, 9 years or whatever it is. So I think it'll be a very competitive game. And I'm really expecting it to be like a 38-35 close game.
Yeah, with the big play, big strike potential that I think both these teams have, it could artificially inflate some of those offensive numbers we see in this game. Each team might, have 12 possessions, so we'll have to see what happens. I agree, 5.5 seems like a big line to separate two teams that have effectively dominated lower competition. It's kind of hard to tell how this is going to go, but I think both offenses are going to have their way to a certain degree. I'm really, really excited to watch this game. I think the quarterback play, it's going to be very different. Yeah, Mateer's way more of kind of a Jaden Daniels type at LSU, just in terms of you really have to worry about his legs, and when you're not worrying about his legs, he is going to be throwing the ball down the field. And Will Rogers is way more of your prototypical pocket quarterback, kind of dissecting a defense. So 2 different styles of quarterback, but 2 really good quarterbacks. Do you have any, I guess, before we get to the game prediction, UW's defense has failed to, or has stopped all offenses from scoring a touchdown. In what quarter of this game does the UW defense give up its first touchdown of the year? The
first quarter. I would even say before the first 5 minutes are up. I think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be that kind of game, especially in the first quarter. First quarter is going to be back and forth. Maybe 14 points scored by both teams, and then it's going to slow down before halftime and then pick right back up afterwards, and it's going to be kind of a hot finish and a hot second half. I think this first quarter is going to be this first quarter is going to be just like both teams pouncing on each other and then the defensive coordinators are going to have to kind of react, figure out how the other team plays, which is why I think that second quarter is going to be a little tighter. But yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty explosive first quarter, and it would be crazy, but I could see Wazoo. Maybe we predict now. I could see Wazoo winning this game. Yeah. At this point, I could see them winning this game 38-35.
I kind of think they might. I don't know. I kind of think they might. I have to see a little more of this Mateer guy. Any guy that can throw for almost 400 yards and then run for 200 the next game is just that is a guy you cannot game plan enough for. We'll see how the UW defense holds up.
Yeah. One thing to think about, too, is the Jonah Coleman aspect. We didn't really talk about UW's rushing game a ton.
He has been dominant.
He's been dominant, and I just don't know how the Cougars are going to fare defensively with him. I think there is a world where UW just runs the ball for 4 straight quarters, and they score every single time they get the ball. And it actually is more of like a 28-24 style game. I still think 5.5 is a crazy line, but I think it's going to be close, but it could be a lower scoring game just because UW is able to run the ball as much as they want.
Yes. Okay, a couple more just kind of notes around college football I wanted to touch on. One, shout out to the conference formerly known as the Pac-12. The teams constituting that now dead institution are 21-2, I believe. 20-2. How does that? No, it's got to be 22-2 or 21-3.
Yep.
In football this year, including 2-0 against the SEC. Shout out Cal for beating Auburn.
Cal beating Auburn, that was big.
Yeah, love to see that. And the second thing is maybe the conference is not so dead after all, because I believe 4 Mountain West teams, Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, I can't remember the fourth, have committed to joining the Pac-12, joining Oregon and Washington State. Very exciting. Those are some of the headliners. Maybe Utah State as well was the...
I think that's what I remember it being.
So let's go all state schools, baby. That's amazing. Those are, kind of the headliners of the Mountain West. I guess in a way I'm a little bummed for the Mountain West to be gutted kind of the way the Pac-12 was, but at the same time, I love that the conference is not going to, die in the crib. It's too important of a conference, so I'm excited for that aspect of it. It also really opens up the opportunity in a big way for Gonzaga and a team like Grand Canyon or another big-time school without a football program to join. There's already been some rumblings and some whisperings about, say Pac-12 gets up to 10, having Gonzaga and, say, GCU be 2 of those 10. Then you have an 8-team conference for football, 10-team for basketball, and it could work really well. So keep your eyes on that, because we've been ready for Gonzaga to make a move out of the WCC for a while now, and with this Pac-12 reconstitution, looks like it could be a potential great fit. So shout out to Oregon State and Washington State. As far as I'm concerned, they're both winners. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it does suck, like you were saying, the Mountain West kind of getting beat up and torn apart, especially in the basketball world. I think that's kind of where it shines a little bit more brightly.
That was fun. But now that's going to shine in the Pac.
Well, I think what it is like you don't get the Nevada, you don't get there's I think San Diego State. Like there's a few really good teams in the Mountain West Conference, and I think those rivalries were all there, and it was a really great conference. I think last year they had 5 teams in the tournament. Like they were that was a good conference.
But bro, if San Diego State jumps ship and come to the Pac, and Gonzaga comes, those 2 teams are going to be duking it out for 1 seeds in the tournament.
Well, that's the thing. It's like this move right here was a football move. Those 4 teams wanted it for football purposes to make money that way. If we can convince those other, larger basketball programs as well to move over here, and their football teams are going to take losses because it's going to be the better side of the Mountain West and 2 relatively good Pac-12 teams still.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a world where it grows up to 8, and then like you said, Gonzaga and GCU hop on, or some other WCC team or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's in a good spot now. I think it's in a spot where it can grow, and it doesn't have to push for it. I think that's a good baseline that they can use, and they would love to take some more Mountain West teams, but they don't want that conference to just tumble into nothingness and be where they were last year.
Sure. And, worth noting they're at 6. They need 2 more to meet the requirements for a conference, but they've got 6 really, really solid programs. Yeah. They can always get 2, lower tier guys to hop on just to meet the number. So
I hear University of Portland's looking for a conference.
Portland State, baby. Wazoo would love to play Portland State every year. One more state school. It's great. I'm excited. The Pac-12 will be back. The rumors of its death were greatly exaggerated, and I'm pumped for that. We're pushing time here, so let's move on to maybe our biggest discussion of the day: the 26-20 Seattle Seahawks win over the Denver Broncos. I have a lot of thoughts here. Why don't you lead us off?
I think this was one of the ugliest games the Seahawks could have played. I think that's kind of the case. Like, the fact that this game was close is wild, because the first half was horrendous by all accounts. Just like the Seahawks offense did nothing. The Broncos were able to get, was it 2 safeties in the first half? I know they had 2 safeties. That's almost unheard of. That's crazy. So the fact that the Seahawks were able to stem that like craziness of awfulness that they had at the start of the game, and they were able to come out with a 6-point victory is I think a good thing in my book. Like, the game in and of itself was horrible, but when you think this team is going to play better than that, they're never going to play that bad this year. They're going to play better than that this week against the New England Patriots. It's going to be uphill from there. So I think you're in the right ballpark with it just being an awful game, but there's things to look forward to.
Yeah. One thing, 1-0. A record under the Mike Macdonald tenure. Shout out to Mike Macdonald for doing his job. The defense looked very sharp, just picking on Bo Nix. anybody listening to this, I'm assuming, has taken in enough football content to know what a disastrous start Bo Nix had to his young NFL career. 26 of 42 for 138 yards. That is
That is the Bo Nix stacks you were talking about.
That is check down madness. Looking at that stat line will drive a man insane. Trying to figure out how you complete 26 passes for 138 yards and 2 picks. He was really bad. I'm not trying to pile on to the guy, but he was really bad. And I think a big part of that was Mike McDonald having this defense ready. Now, you might look at, the fact that they had 20 points and be like, okay, how ready was their defense? But this is a team gave up 2 safeties. That's 4 points from the offense. Geno threw a pick that led to a field goal, so make that 7 of the 20
That pick was also at the 10-yard line. It was awful.
Correct. They allowed they allowed a late touchdown. Late touchdown with 2 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. When
the defense was basically playing prevent. So, if you take away that touchdown and the 7 points from the offense, they allowed 2 field goals the entire game. So I was really impressed with the way Mike McDonald had this defense ready to play. Shout out to, oh gosh, I just had it pulled up. Shout out to nobody. Alex Singleton had one of the 2 picks. He was very good. Who was it?
I think Tariq Woolen had the other one, right?
Tariq Woolen, thank you. Gosh, I'm going insane. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Oh, that's what it was. I was looking at the wrong team. Julian Love. Thank you. I knew it was Julian Love that had the pick. Yeah, it was Woolen and Julian Love. Julian Love also had 10 tackles on the game. That was awesome.
Yeah, Julian Love had a really good game.
But I want to talk about this Seattle Seahawks offense, and I want to talk about our dear, dear Geno Smith. Geno had a 34-yard rushing touchdown. That was our first score of the game. That's kind of, I don't really believe that. That is not something that he really does with his legs.
No, he's not going to do that again this year.
Correct. So, as cool as that was, we can basically scrap that off the board. And what he did was 18 of 25 for 170 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Kenneth Walker was awesome. 20 carries for 103 yards. Running game looks really strong. I love starting the year on a bad note. I know it was week 1, short preseason. Maybe we just need to let Geno have this one. But I really don't like the way that he ran the offense. He spread the ball out a lot, but he almost spread it out too much, where a lot of these receivers, Lockett had 77 yards, but DK and Jackson Smith were both limited to under 30 yards receiving. That should fall squarely on Geno's shoulders. His only passing touchdown was to a running back with a broken coverage. I just don't know, man. We're a week in and I'm already itching to get Sam Howell out there throwing some downfield passes to some of these guys.
I don't believe that at the moment. I think Geno's serviceable. It's his first year under Ryan Grubb. This is a very new style of offense for him. And I think Ryan Grubb is, it was his first game calling an NFL game where he was having to figure out what the Denver Broncos defense was doing, and he was going against Sean Payton. Like, Sean Payton is, by all accounts, a good coach, good head coach. I don't know, how good this Broncos team is going to be defensively and how they're going to stack up against some of the other good defensive teams in the league, but I think it was a college coach coming into the NFL's first game, playing it safe against a bad team. We didn't want to go too hard. Geno had the interception. I don't think that's like we talked about this all last season. That's something that Geno is going to have to get rid of. Like, if he's going to be the Seahawks quarterback this entire season, he needs to be a 1 touchdown, 20 for 27 with 200 yards. Like, that's all he needs to be for the Seahawks team to be great. And just can't be turning the ball over. And I think that one interception was not necessarily indicative of how his season's going to go. It's a little bit preemptive to want Sam Howell to come out. But all things considered, I think you're right. DK and JSN just need to be more involved. And I think we see that more this week. I think it's going to be more scheming and less just like figuring out what's going on. Ryan Grubb was responding to what was happening on the field instead of being able to prep, because now he's seen not preseason NFL football,
Yeah, I hear you. I just think there will always be a very real ceiling on this offense when Geno's at the head. And to your point, maybe that's not what they need to succeed. But if they want to like really compete, you need a quarterback that can raise your ceiling and not lower it. And I've never seen Sam Howell outside of a Washington Commanders jersey, so I'm not going to pretend that he's the second coming. But I know what he can do with his legs, and I know what he can do with the ball downfield. My hot prediction for this season I'm going to make is that we are going to see Sam Howell in a Seahawks jersey on the field, and it's not going to be because Geno's hurt. At some point, that is going to happen. That's my hot take. Yeah, with that being said, I don't have a whole much more to say about this week. 2 safeties is absolutely insane. That's a little bit on Ryan Grubb, too, for being a little too cute in those situations. You can't allow that to happen twice. But, yeah, they rallied a bit, and this coming week will be another really good test for the offense and another really fun opponent to pick on if you're a defense in the New England Patriots. Patriots coming off kind of a surprise win over the Cincinnati Bengals.
Definitely a surprise win over the Bengals. I think in my eliminator competition with my family, 4 of them had the Bengals winning this game, so I felt nice.
Let's go. It's easy money, sounds like to me. They were the biggest underdog of the week, and they pulled out the dub. So it was a big upset. But
tough for us. That was one of the underdogs that we didn't pick, of course, because we both didn't like it.
We didn't want anything to do with that. But not really surprising. Joe Burrow sucks in September. His stats in the month he always starts the year so horribly. They were able to move the ball well, and their defense, I think, looked a lot better than people were expecting. But I think this is a pretty good example of a really good defense, probably maybe top 10 in the NFL, this Patriots defense, with a pretty piss-poor offense. No offense to the Patriots. How do you anticipate this matchup going with the Hawks?
It'll be interesting. I think it's actually kind of it's going to be a very different style of game than the Broncos one, because the Broncos are trying to, put Nix through the fire, get him on the other side, and have him be good. The Patriots don't care about Jacoby Brissett. They want to give Ramondre Stevenson the ball every single possession that they can and just have him run it down our throats. So it's going to be a very different style of play that I think we're going against. And this Seahawks team struggled against the run a lot last season. So this is kind of going to be the game that Mike McDonald has to prove to us that he can stop the run. That's going to be the interesting thing for this week, is how did the Seahawks fare against this different Patriots-style offense? I think the other side of that is Ryan Grubb on the offensive side of the ball. It just has to – the Patriots – I think their cornerbacks and safeties are very, very good. And I think the Patriots defense is very good.
Their pass rush is a lot better than people were expecting.
Yeah, I think it's just a good defensive team. And so when you get down to it, it's going to be kind of a totally different game than it was last week. The Seahawks are going to have to be tight with the ball. They're not going to have, the interceptions are going to cost them, because the Patriots, even if they don't score, they're going to take 7 minutes off the clock when they get the ball. It's just going to be a low scoring game, and the Seahawks need a couple big plays to, I think, get clear of that. But it's going to be a tricky one.
100%. I think it's going to look a lot like this Broncos game in a lot of ways. I think the teams are constructed in kind of similar ways. Another magnifying glass on Geno Smith and Ryan Grubb in this offense. You can, scratch week 1 up to be in week 1, but you string multiple weeks like this together, things start to rumble. So we will see. This is a real test, a real defense here with the Patriots. I'm not really worried about them losing this game, but I am worried about what the offense is going to look like. So I'm going to be watching it closely. Yeah,
Kenneth Walker also might not play tomorrow or Sunday.
That's a fair point. Yeah, he's been dealing with some stuff.
Going to be tricky. I think. Like you said, we've been recording for an hour now, so we probably should move on. But yeah, I think the Seahawks game against the Patriots is going to be interesting. We're not going to talk about the line, because next up, of course, we have your favorite, the Sound Up Seattle Value Dogs. Let's talk through them, John. You want to go first this week, or actually, you went first last week, right?
I went first last week. It should be you.
All right, I'll go first. With my first pick for the NFL Week 2 Sound Up Seattle Value Dogs, I am going to take the Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, plus 7.5 against the Lions. The Bucs looked good last week. I think they kind of smacked the Commanders around, and we had the Commanders, whatever it was, plus 3.5. And we thought the Bucs would be bad. I think this Bucs team is better than we gave them credit for, and them getting 7.5 points against a Lions team that just went to overtime against the Rams is good value. 7.5 points is a lot, and I think the Bucs could be as good as the Rams. I don't think they are, but they could be as good as the Rams. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think this is a great example. It's an aging defense, but it's still okay. Maybe a little below league average on the Buccaneers. Their offense looks good. It just looks good. They've got a great receiving room with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and our guy, Jalen McMillan. The running game with Rashad White and rookie Bucky Irving is looking a lot better. And Baker looks like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He's just been really good since he's put on a Buccaneers jersey. He just has been. This is a team that could beat the Detroit Lions. I would be a little surprised, but not that surprised if they won this game. Not only are they plus points, they're more than a touchdown. I could easily see this team winning by 3, losing by 3, losing by 7. 7.5 points is crazy. That is a line. Liquidate your assets. Sell
First
your
time
house.
we've said that this year.
Yeah. Break open your kid's piggy bank. You're going to pay it back with interest. That 7.5 points for the Bucs is awesome, and I was going to take it, but I'm not going to take it.
Wow, I was surprised you didn't.
We don't need to repeat any more picks. By the way, how did we do last week? Did you write that down?
Oh yeah, I got it. Sorry, I didn't even summarize. Last week we both went 1-2. I almost had my Ravens +3 line, but I was off by a toe, And then
that's right. That was brutal. And then so the two. I guess they were
going to go for the 2-point conversion.
It was going to be a win for you either way. That's right.
Yeah. We covered the Cards. They were +6.5 against the Bills, right. And then you had the Rams +3.5. Tough game for you there.
You're right. I got hosed.
Yeah,
should have been 2-1 for your boy. Should have been 2-1.
And then we both had the Commanders +3.5, and they got rattled around a little bit.
Yeah, they got gobsmacked. That was on us. That's our bad. Okay, well that makes me feel a little bit better. We should be 2-1 right now. We got hosed. You could have been 3-0.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, hey, take 1 and 2 with a grain of salt. Those were good picks by us. And that Bucs pick is amazing, but I'm staying away from it because I'm braver than that.
That's crazy. I was struggling to find good lines for this week. This is a tough underdog week.
There are a couple, and there's one I really like. I think this is almost on par with the Bucs. And it is the Los Angeles Rams +1 point. This is a team, the line opened at Rams -2.5. Vegas said, hey, Rams -2.5. And then all the bettors in the world who love Kyler Murray have been pouring money onto the Cardinals and changing this line. But that does not change the fact that, the line swayed 3.5 points. You think whatever you want. From what Vegas came out at, there's been a 3.5 point change in value in your favor if you pick the LA Rams. This is a team that still has Matt Stafford, probably the headiest quarterback in the NFL, Cooper Kupp, a top 5 receiver in the NFL when he's healthy. Kyron Williams looked solid in their first game. They're going to be out Puka Nacua, which hurts. But all that just means is you double the targets to Cooper Kupp. The guy had like 18 targets week 1. And their defense, while not world beaters, are a hell of a lot better from this piss-poor Cardinals defense. Cardinals have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I expect the Rams to move the ball up and down the field. I can't believe you're getting them plus points against this Cardinals team.
Yeah, I think this is a Arizona fans Puka Nacua sway. I think it's Puka's not playing. We gotta capitalize on this. And the fact of the matter is the Rams just covered or almost covered 3.5 against the Lions last week. And he played for half of the first quarter. So at the end of the day, they didn't have Puka last week and they still performed. This week, I expect them to perform just as well. Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp, it doesn't matter how long you have to prepare for that. They will always be just a dynamic duo. And so I had this line as well. So you took my second pick, which is fair. I feel like we keep trying to be different, but sometimes you just got to stick with your gut. And we're trying to win the people money here. So this is where we're going to go for it.
All right. Well, then give us your third pick here.
All right, my third and final pick. This was my tough one. I was struggling.
Bills plus 2.5 against the Dolphins. That line looks pretty good. By the way, for the record, I 100% would have smashed that if we'd have recorded this on Wednesday, I absolutely would have taken that. But
I probably would have too. That was a tough game for the Dolphins, and I think we got to bet against them now every time we get a chance.
I just got to say, Tua, man, you just got to be better. Like,
you got to slide.
Concussion. He got a concussion, and it was 100% his fault. I've never seen anybody like get tackled worse where like they made it bad. Like the defender could not have tackled him more gently, and Tua's just like, where can I put my neck to like shake my head the most during? I'm not trying to mock the guy. It sucks that he got another concussion, but at some points, like, dude, just slide.
Yeah, like you're down 21 or whatever it was. Like you don't
go head first into the sky. Anyway, sorry, your third pick.
All right, my third pick is going to be the Chicago Bears plus 6.5.
You rat fuck! Oh, god damn it. Okay, well, at least we're not sharing all three of our picks. We literally would have been 3 for 3. I'm also taking the Bears plus 6.5.
Yeah, the Texans, as good as they are and as good as CJ Stroud is, they gave up 27 points to the Colts, and I think Anthony Richardson he just had his first game back off that crazy shoulder injury. And I think Caleb Williams had a rough game against the Titans, and I think it's gonna, it was week 1 kind of thing. He just needs to get his feet under him, and the Bears just needed to kind of figure out where they were going to score. And I think this Texans defense is also just not as good as the Titans defense. So I'm taking the Bears. It's plus 6.5 points. They could lose by 2 field goals and still be fine. And I expect them to have a better offensive game. Your rancid dog from last week almost came up with the win there. We were lucky that the Bears defense turned it around, but I think the Bears offense this week is going to be much better.
I never doubted it. I never doubted my rancid dog, and they were rancid after all. Shout out Will Levis, the most rancid quarterback in the NFL. No, I like this line a lot. 6.5 points is a lot of points. It's a lot of points, people. Most NFL games are decided within 7 points, believe it or not. And this Bears defense looked like the best defense in the NFL last week. I'm not sure that they are. I am sure that they are a top 10 defense in the NFL, maybe top 5. This is a team with speed everywhere. Their pass rush looks good. Their linebackers are fast as hell. Their corners and safeties are some of the best in the NFL. They are going to be scary for the defenses to play every single week. Do not sleep. All the Caleb Williams hype. Don't look too much on offense at the Bears. Focus more on their defense. They are really, really good on that side of the ball. And yeah, to your point, this is an offense that cannot play worse than they did last week. Caleb, rookie, first game of the season, he was obviously nervous. Was not effective getting the ball to anybody. This was an offense we were all very excited about coming into week 1 with Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, arguably the best 3-headed wide receiver core in the NFL, with a Heisman-winning quarterback who can scramble behind the helm. I'm very in on Chicago having a bounce-back game offensively, even if that means scoring, 17 points with their offense. And I think their defense is so legit. Much more of a test for CJ and these Texans than the Colts defense was. 6.5 points is a lot of points.
Yeah. With that being said, you got one more pick.
Yeah, and to tie it all in, it's worth noting that the Chicago Bears offense was going up against a really surprisingly good defense in the Tennessee Titans. I think we were also focused on how bad Will Levis is and was. That, we didn't necessarily, we're putting it all on Caleb Williams, but that Titans defense looked really good. Their pass rush looked amazing. I think we underrated how the Titans were going to look on that side of the ball. With that being said, my third value dog pick is the Tennessee Titans plus 3.5 against the New York Jets. I think this Titans defense is really legit. I think they could give the Jets fits just like the Niners defense did all night. That Jets offense that we were all so excited for did not look good against the San Francisco 49ers. Will Levis cannot play a worse game than he played. I'm not a believer in Will Levis, but that pick 6 was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. I think he threw 3 interceptions, or 2 and a fumble. He was unwatchable. But Tony Pollard looks really good. Tajay looked okay. Their ground game looks good. And I think this defense is doing some things. And again, you're getting more than a field goal. Give me the Titans plus 3.5 against the New York Jets.
Yeah, the Jets, I think they have some holes defensively. I don't think it's at their cornerback position. I think Will Levis is not going to have to do a lot, and Tony Pollard can just kind of sit back and ride this game out on his legs. I think it'll be probably a lower scoring game. I think the Jets offensively have not shown anything. Maybe this is the breakout game, and they're going to win by 18. But at the same time, the Jets scored 13 points last week, and were not impressive at all offensively. We'll see if they can come back against this Titans team. I fully expect the Jets to win. The Jets are just better talent wise than the Titans, but I can see the Titans, this being a 13-16 type game, and it kind of coming down to the wire.
100%. That's our value dogs for the week. We really did everything we could to completely overlap there, but I'm glad we didn't. We need a little variety.
Yes. Do you have a rancid dog? I'm going to keep track of your rancid dogs as well.
That is a good call. My rancid dog for the week. There are a couple good contenders for this. But yeah, I think I'm going to pull the trigger. And I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, that's 3. What I was just looking at. I was like, do it, John.
Against the Indy Colts. And, the Packers are a great team. And if Jordan Love was playing, they would be -3.5 probably against this Colts team. But their defense didn't look awesome week 1. Eagles kind of had their way with them. Anthony Richardson and this Colts offense looks really good with their downfield threats. And then Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, scaring defenses up front. But the real reason I'm taking this line is because we are going to have not Malik Neighbors, the other
Malik Willis.
Thank you. Malik Willis, former Titans quarterback. Heading
former Will Levis backup. Crazily.
That's right. Bro, that is it.
That's all you need to say. Packers +3 in this game with the Will Levis backup quarterback.
Enough said. I cannot tell you how little I fear Malik Willis. Jaden Reed in week 1 looked like one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL. I'm expecting him. He's on my fantasy team, and I'm benching him. He had 28 points last week, and I'm benching him because I'm anticipating he'll have 1 reception for 3 yards this week. If Malik Willis crosses the 10 completions line, I will be surprised. So this is a pick almost entirely based on the most important position, which is quarterback. So the Packers are my rancid dog of the week.
Good. If I had a rancid dog, that was going to be my pick. So glad we were in agreement on that one. It's a good week for us.
The backup of the most rancid quarterback in the NFL, man. That's too much.
All right, we'll breeze through some Storm, some Sounders discussion. The Storm have played, I believe they played 3 games since we talked last. That was the Liberty, the Mercury, and the Sparks. They went 2-1, losing to the Liberty, which we expected, and then beating the Mercury and Sparks, which we also expected. We expect, this team as a whole has not proven that they could beat good opponents. And I think their last test is going to be at the Aces. They're playing right now against Dallas, and they're up 10 as we're recording in the end of the third quarter-ish time frame. 4 games left, 1 game against the Aces. The rest should be pretty easy wins. And that Aces game is kind of the final test before they're in the playoffs and have to beat good opponents. Yeah. So I'm a little nervous for the Storm right here, but hopefully they can finish the season strong. Yeah,
I think you're selling them a tiny bit short. I get what you're saying, but they just beat Connecticut a week ago, and Connecticut's still a good team. I've been encouraged by this week. The Liberty loss was tough, but that was really the Liberty defense played awesome and held the Storm to 70 points. They dropped 90 in the next 2, which is more of what we like to see from them. That Aces game will be huge. They're currently 1 game behind the Aces for the 2 seed in the East. We would love to get up to that 2 spot. So depending on how these next 2 games go, could be a lot of attention on that September 17th matchup with the Aces to see if they can pull that out. Shout out, Skylar Diggins-Smith leading the Storm in scoring 2 of the last 3 games, including a beautifully efficient 11 of 13 game against the Sparks. And shout out to our bench, Ezzy Magbagor and Jordan Horston, both registering their first, not bench, but just, the not big 3. Registering their first double digits point game since returning from the break. We were talking about how much we need their contributions, and they've both been playing a lot better. I think we've been seeing that in some of these box scores. Jewel Lloyd continues to be really good and then really bad depending on the night. I'd love her to be a little more efficient. But yeah, that Liberty game, Nyeka and Jewel both struggled mightily, and we lost by 7 to arguably the best team in women's basketball. So I still believe in this team. I still believe in this group. Let's get these next 2. That Aces game will be huge, and then it's playoff time, baby.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts on the Storm. We are running quite over time. So hop into the Sounders. They've played once since we last talked, and it was against Columbus Crew. They win 4-0 off a hat trick from Albert Risnack, and kind of just swung themselves into that 5th spot again in the Western Conference standings. It's still a jumble between the 4th to the 8th spot. And so if they lose and these other teams win over their next stretch, it's going to be tough for them. But I do believe in this Sounders team. I think as we've seen recently, they've turned it around. So we'll see. We said we weren't going to talk about them much, so we're going to limit it. But they don't play any more LA teams, I believe, the rest of the season. Am I right about that?
Unless we meet them in the playoff. you are 100% right. No, we should be done with LA.
Sweet. Well, I think that's it for Sounders. Anything else you want to get off your chest? I was going to bring up the Pac-12 expansion, or Pac-2 expansion, I guess.
No, we got enough on that. And I told you guys, I'm not talking Sounders, man. I'm not. We'll talk playoff time. I'm done for the time being. So
all right. I think the Kraken preseason starts in 9 days. That is something to note. They played Calgary, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, exciting things going on in Seattle sports. So I think with all that being said, I can sign us out. I was just getting a phone call in the middle of this, and I was just like, why is my computer making all this noise? I was trying to talk just to you, but it was distracting me.
No, that was nice. You were making a lot of eye contact there. I was feeling that connection 1,000 miles away, but we still got it, baby.
All right. Well, for John Carey, I'm Tyler Cartwright. This has been the Sound Up Seattle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of Sound Up Seattle, please feel free to give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. We're still going strong on YouTube for our 2nd week in a row. And that's just at Sound Up Seattle. You can email us your questions, comments, or concerns at soundupseattle@gmail.com. You can find me, Tyler, at TyCart50 everywhere that's important. And you can find John
watching football all day, every week, baby. Let's go!
Thursday to Monday is just all for him and the TV.
My girlfriend's never been more miserable.
All right, with all that being said, let's go Dogs, baby.
Let's go Cougs, baby. Let's go!